regard to 3 years of salary, unused vacation, payout, sick leave and comp leave, 401k contributions, the employer contribution to the South Carolina retirement system, annual physical, and insurance payments, health, life, dental, and disability for up to 6 months. For all of those items, I found that the value based on Mr. Preston's salary and a number of other issues, those items totaled $681,056. I thought clearly that was a measure of the severance based on the master employment agreement.
So was that number then the minimum value that you thought could appropriately be placed on the severance provision of the master employment agreement?
Yes. There was one issue with regard to insurance that I said in my report, and I would still say requires some interpretation, I suppose, by the court in this case. It references insurance, and after identifying a number of issues with regard to the severance, it says further, in the event the administrator is terminated by the council, then in that event, all life, health, dental, and disability insurance and all other county provided benefits shall continue in full force and coverage for a period of 6 months or until similar coverage is provided by a subsequent employer. Honestly, I thought that could be interpreted two ways. It might be that the meaning of this phrase was that in addition to these other severance items, Mr. Preston would be provided insurance coverage for 6 months. And I think it could be interpreted that in addition to the 3-year severance to which he was entitled, there might be an additional 6 months of insurance coverage. And honestly, I did not opine as to which one was correct. I presented it both ways.
So did you perform an alternative calculation that assumed the more generous payment to Mr. Preston?
I did. If you assume that the correct interpretation of that was he would be provided with insurance coverage for the full severance period of 3 years plus an additional 6 months. The number that I computed increased to $723,806. So there was about a $42,000 to $43,000 additional value there, if based on that interpretation.
And is the difference then the question under the terms of the master employment agreement, he was entitled to an additional 6 months of coverage?
Yes.
Let me call your attention to item number 24 in this report, which is headed Cost of Purchasing Additional SCRS, South Carolina Retirement System Service Credits. How did you treat that item?
Well, for purposes of this report, there was no reference to that in the master employment agreement. So, what I said was I would not have included the cost of purchasing additional retirement service credit as a severance item if I were asked to compute the severance.
Under the master employment agreement.
Right.
Does what you testified to adequately summarize, do you believe, that the report we just talked about? Have I missed anything?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I expressed some differences between my interpretation and what the settlement offer had been, the November settlement offer. I don't know if you need me to go into those or not.
The result of those differences was that the number that you calculated as the value of the severance provision of the master employment agreement was lower than what was set forth in those demands.
Yeah, it would have been, in my view, either the 681,000 or the 724,000.
And your report sets forth the reasoning for those differences.
It does, yeah.
Let me turn your attention to the second report that you rendered, dated October 9th, 2012, and I believe that's Exhibit 54, Defendant's Exhibit 54. Can you describe to the court what you were asked to do with respect to this report?
Yeah, I was asked to compute the present value of the benefits that Mr. Preston will receive as a result of the purchase of additional service credit, as opposed to the present value of the benefits that he had earned through the end of 2008 without that additional purchase.
And again, your report sets forth the matters that you relied on and assumed in performing those calculations, is that correct?
It does, yeah.
And among other things, did you rely on the affidavit of Sharon Graham of the South Carolina Retirement System and the exhibits there too in performing this calculation?
I did, yeah.
Take us through, if you would, the calculation you performed and what conclusions you reached.
Sure. The calculation of present value is just a way of saying you're accounting for interest that can be earned on money if you're considering its value today. Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation provides us guidelines with what those discount rates would be. I knew the benefit that Mr. Preston began receiving in January of 2009, and I knew the benefit that he would have received reaching age 65 or reaching age 60 if he had not had that additional service credit purchased. What I did was to compute the present value of each one of those. They account for cost of living adjustments year by year. And I know precisely what those adjustments were, and I know what they will be going forward, because they're going to be limited in his case, certainly based on the current statute, to $500 a year. I computed the benefits through the end of his statutory life expectancy based on the South Carolina Code. As of 12/31/2008, he was 45.7 years of age, and he had a life expectancy of 32.78 years. That would go through August 31 of 2041. So essentially, I developed a schedule of payments from January 2009 through August of 2041. Reduced those payments to present value. When I did that, I computed the present value of those payments that he in fact will receive as a result of the buyout. And that was, in present value dollars, that is $1,184,542. In other words, reducing the future benefits back to today's dollars, so you can compare apples and apples.
And Dr. Alford, you say today's dollars, but your calculation was as of December 31st, 2008.
Yes, that's right, the date of determination. The total benefits he will receive are some $3,211,000, but reduced present value, that's $1,184,542. In fact, he had earned some retirement benefit. What he had earned prior to that additional purchase would not have commenced until age 60. Those payments in present value dollars, again as of 12/31/2008, were $200,411.44. So the difference in those two numbers, the difference between the 184 and the 200,400 is the present value of the additional benefits which were purchased for Mr. Preston by the county. That value, the difference was $984,131.
And again, that's the present value of that difference as of December 31st, 2000.
Yeah, that's how it would have been valued in terms of the additional benefits he was to receive as of December 31, 2008.
Right. And we've heard testimony in this case that the amount that the county paid to purchase those additional benefits was approximately $355,000 to $356,000. So the present value at the time of that purchase approximately was considerably greater than what was paid for that benefit. Do you have any understanding of where that difference arises or how that can come about?
Sure, yeah. If the purchase of the additional service would have simply entitled him to a higher benefit beginning at age 60, then it would have probably been pretty much a wash, you know. Pretty much what they paid for the additional service would have been reflected in additional benefits upon his retirement, because the formula is 1.82% times years of service times ending average earnings. What happened, though, was that with that purchase, he received the right to begin receiving those benefits right away. From January 2009 until he reaches age 60, he will have received $1,333,000 of retirement benefits that wouldn't have been available to him without that buyout. And they have a present value of about $804,000. After age 60, because his benefits started earlier at a higher level and there will have been cost of living increases all throughout, after he reaches age 60, he will receive $883,000 in benefits more than he would have received without that purchase. And the present value of that is right at $180,000. So most of that additional value, the overwhelming amount, came because it enabled him to begin drawing benefits right away.
And then the second number you mentioned is a result of increased benefits after age 60 over what he could have drawn based only on his actual service.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try not to be too. For example, when he reached age 60, if he hadn't had that additional, if the county had not purchased that additional service for him, his initial monthly pension would have been $4,109. That's where it would have started. What's happened is that his initial pension in January of 2009 was, I forget, $7,000 some odd dollars. And by the time he reaches 60, with cost of living adjustments, that will be $8,105. So when he gets to 60, he's going to have a benefit about twice what he would have had.
Dr. Alford, you compare the present value of the stream of pension benefits that Mr. Preston is currently receiving with the hypothetical stream that he would have been entitled to receive absence the purchase of credits as when he reached age 60. It's true, as I understand it, Mr. Preston could also have waited until age 65 to begin drawing a pension and drawn a larger pension. Is that correct?
He could have drawn a larger pension, but...
My question to you is, which one of those would have been more advantageous for Mr. Preston?
Oh, age 60.
Oh, so
because although he could have drawn a larger pension at 65, the present value would be smaller because you forego 5 years of benefits.
So in performing the calculation and in calculating the difference that you've described, you assumed for Mr. Preston that he would take the option that would give him the greater present value and would start at age 60.
Sure.
All right, so let me ask you to turn your attention now to the third opinion that you were asked to render in this case. I believe that's Exhibit 55.
Yes.
It's headed Ray Palmetto Agricultural Consultants with Mr. Davis. I'll call it a PAC. What were you asked to do with respect to the PAC contract?
You asked me to compare a contract that the county had with Palmetto Agricultural Consultants dated September 4th, 2007, and a subsequent contract that it had dated November 1st, 2008.
And in particular, was the comparison of under certain assumptions of the values of those two contracts?
Yes.
And what analysis did you perform and what conclusions did you reach?
Well, I indicated to you that I thought the second contract was clearly more valuable to Palmetto Agricultural Consultants for 3 reasons. First, the term of the first contract was month to month. The term of the second contract was 3 years, and you have to combine that with the fact that if the second contract was breached, then the county would be liable for damages for breaking that second contract. So with only the county being liable for breaking it and it being longer, if I were negotiating someone for a contract, I'd rather have that second contract if I were Palmetto Agricultural Consultants. Second, the compensation. The hourly compensation in the first contract was $65. In the second contract, it was $75, increasing to $85, and increasing to $95, 1, 2, and 3 years. However, of course, you have to recognize that the second contract was a year after the first one, but that increase is, way more than the inflation rate was. I mean, actually in 2009, we had a negative rate of inflation of about 0.7%. So in terms of compensation, clearly the second contract was better.
Dr. Alford, did you perform a calculation assuming a certain number of hours per week to compare or to analyze the impact of the increased hourly compensation rate under the contract?
I did, yeah. There's a reference in the second contract, and it deals with the remedy for breach in case the county broke the second contract. It is based on as if 30 hours per week had been invoiced. So I use that as a guideline. If you do that, the second contract over the 3-year period provided for payments of $397,800. The first contract over the same period would be $304,200. So
for the same hours worked, the difference in the rates makes that much difference.
Big difference, yeah.
Did you also make a calculation of the value of the liquidated damages clause that you've referred to that provided for remedy to PAC in the event that Anderson County terminated the contract.
Yeah, and of course that depended on when they broke the contract, if they did. But the value
I'm sorry.
at the initial, at the outset of the contract, that value is that same $397,800. You know, if Anderson County broke the contract, they would pay up to that amount to Palmetto Agricultural Consultants.
So that would the $397,800 would have been the value, the liquidated damages value if the county had breached the contract in the first week.
When it was signed, yes.
And then as time went on, because the liquidated damages provision was measured by the life of the contract, that amount would decline.
Exactly.
But it would not have declined in a precisely linear fashion because of the change in the hourly rate. Is that correct?
No, it would, based on the way I read that, it would have declined linearly. It would still be based on whatever the scheduled rate was for the remaining period.
But the value,
times 30 hours away.
Would you agree with me that the value of the third year of the contract would be greater than the value of the second year?
Of course.
Because the hourly rate was greater.
Yes.
Dr. Alford, thank you very much. That was helpful. Please answer the questions, Mr. Davis.
Maybe sure with us. Yes, ma'am.
May I have first witness, Your Honor?
You may.